Hey everybody, welcome back to Cuddles R Us. Today we're going to be talking about everything power and which is the best one. So stay tuned. Now, we got four main power generators to talk about. We have the basic, the one that you start out with, right? Just fuel power generator. Then we have a wind turbine omnidirectional. We then have a wind turbine directional, and then we have the big boy, the Spice power generator. Now, I've tried every single one of these generators, and some are more efficient than others. So let's talk about it. Let's go ahead and let's talk about maybe the fuel power generator, maybe the best generator out there. And I can't say it's the best, but it is the second best generator that you can have, due to the fact that this is going to be your main generator for early game and even your late game deep desert bases. So the reason why I say this is because this generator will be filled up by simply just picking up fuel cells off the ground, and the fuel cells last for a total uptime of 20 days and 20 hours. Now, you don't have to have them generate that much power, but with that said, the fuel power generator only will generate 75 power per generator. So you'll need two fuel power generators to power one omnidirectional turbine. Now, the omnidirectional turbine will now start costing you some extra time. Now, the time comes into when you make its fuel. So when you start making low-grade lubricant, you're going to need flour sand to make silicone blocks. Once you made the silicone blocks, then you're going to use a fuel cell, silicone block, smash those together. That's what you're going to start getting your omnidirectional fuel for. Okay. Then we also have the wind turbine directional turbine, right? Now, I personally think that this is the best generator in the entire game. And maybe not for the reason that you might think. Okay. So when we look at this generator, we see that we have a total uptime of 31 days, 6 hours. Okay. Now, this generator is hands down probably a little bit harder to obtain, but once you meet end game or mid game, this generator becomes your best friend due to the fact. Oh, let's get into this one. Okay. The big Spice power generator. Now, this big Spice power generator also lasts a total uptime of 31 days, 6 hours. Also, okay, it's 31 days, 7 hours or something close to that factor. But this generator right here cost a ton to make. Now, when I say it cost a ton to make, I mean it cost a literally ton to make. Plastinium ingots, silicone blocks, spice melange, complex parts, cobalt paste, and advanced machinery. All right, like it takes a lot to make. When you look at some of the other ones, so the directional turbine, duraluminum, cobalt paste, calibrated servox, and also spice melange, but it only takes 3. It doesn't take, what is that, 270 spice to make it. All right. Now you're probably like, well, this one only does 350 power when this one does 1000 power. But I can definitely tell you, spice melange that it takes to operate, or the spice residue that it takes to operate this one, is a lot higher than it does to run this one. Okay. Now you're probably like, but the other ones are cheap too. Yes, they are cheap, and still, cobalt paste, calibrated servox. This turbine, pretty decent, but you can get away with just having 2 of the fuel power generators at the same time. But one little caveat that most people don't want to talk about is actually production limit. Now, when you talk about production limit, this is when it gets a little funny. because each base has a production limit. So by looking at your event sub fee, you can actually check out your production limit. So if you look here, you can see that I'm at 60 or 59 of 80, and I have the max amount of building slots available. Okay. And with that said, each one of your upgrades will actually offer you a little bit more in your production. All right. So when I say that this is a good source of power, now it is, okay? But it does stem from the fact that you're going to have a lot of them in your base, and you won't be able to have everything and all of these fuel power generators, especially if you're running big pentashields like I am. And it's just going to run into a huge problem. So with that said, Omnidirectional Wind Turbine and the small fuel cell generator, right? Both of these cost you next to nothing to operate and maintain. All right. A little bit of time on the omnidirectional, but it's far less efficient than people might want to think. All right. Because you're only going to receive 20 days out of either one of these. And even if your base is powered by, let's say that you have your base powered by at least one of these, your maximum uptime will always be whatever the 20 hours. Okay. Because you're basing your power usage on one of these two machines. Now, if you switched over to only running the directional wind turbine or even just a Spice generator, you would be receiving 31 days of consistent power in your base. Now, you're like, but why not just build this one? It's has more power, and I have to have less of them, and I can get more production value, or get more production. Well, I have every piece of equipment in the game in my base turned on, running, and I can honestly say I'll take 3 of these versus 1 of these any day because of how much this one takes to run versus this one. So let's talk about what it takes to operate each one of these. Now, we only have to pick up fuel cells for the small generator. Low-grade lubricant is only going to be 1 fuel cell and silicone blocks. Okay. Industrial-grade lubricant. Now, this is where I say that this becomes like the best. It does stem from the fact that you are endgame, and it is part of one of the endgame resources. Now, spice residue you get from the big, large spice refinery, and to get spice residue, you have to put 10,000 sand in, and then you'll get spice residue. You'll get 1,000 spice residue for every 2,000 spice that you put in, or 20,000 spice sand that you put in. You'll get 1,000 spice residue out of that. Okay. As you see, I farm spice all the time. It's not, the byproduct isn't that big of a deal. It's the cost that it takes. So if you look here, it cost me 5 spice residue to make one of these. Okay, it gives me 10 of the industrial grade lubricant. It gives me 10 of them. All right, it cost me 5 spice residue, 4 silicone blocks, 6 fuel cells, and 15 water. Now, you can say that this costs water and this costs water, but in the grand scheme of things, this is a byproduct of spice melange, and this will cost you an additional 50 water. So what is that? 65 water, and this is just considered a byproduct. Now you're like, okay, well, the spice-infused fuel cell. Now, if we look at the spice-infused fuel cell, this is actually one of the biggest scams that you can possibly get, is because of this. Okay, now if the generator potentially gave me more than 10 spice-infused fuel cells, this might be worth it. But these fuel cells are still only going to give you 1 hour and 30 minutes of actual fuel power time. So if you look at the industrial grade lubricant, they give you the same amount of time, same as this one. Now, and there's no getting more time out of either one. So it's not really cost effective for you to go and spend your hard resources on spice infused fuel cells. They do cost 50 or 65 spice residue. Now, this is a far jump from 5. So you add 60 to your overall cost for the same power, or for the same amount of time power generation. Okay. Now you can argue for, the amount of power that you're producing versus the amount that you're going to be receiving. But even if I was to make 3 of these, right, at 15, because these are 350 power per unit, the resources are easier to come by. It's cheaper to get because it's only duraluminum, so you don't have to fight anybody for it. Spice sand you can find inside the Haga Basin. And yeah, granted, smaller amounts, but you can still do it. We did it a lot, and pretty much every time that I was anytime that I heard a spice blow, I was on it. Okay. But when you look at the Spice-infused power cells, it also takes irregulated slag. And now you can get this from Seoul, and that, from the shipwrecks, lost treasures, stuff like this, you can find it. It takes 30 fuel cells, but honestly, this is the biggest scam that you can possibly run into. You'll be wasting a lot of your spice residue on trying to make this and trying to maintain those, to maintain that resource. Okay. Now, I can honestly say you do not need to use as much power as my base is using. Okay. My base uses a ton of power. All right. My base uses 7,313 power the entire time. I have 8,700 power. Still, because I was planning on adding a second large ore refinery to my build. But now that I'm thinking about it, I might not actually do that because I don't really need it. Like, we farm a lot in the deep desert. We do a lot of processing there too. So is it really necessary? I don't think so. But here's my conclusion. I can go on and on about how we do things, and it's going to be what's best sense for you and your build and what you have going on. Maybe you don't have the time to harvest spice or to, amass a fortune like me and Mrs. Cuddles. Okay. And we are 2 people. Now, maybe this might change if I was, just by myself and solo, but, we are 2 people. We share the same base. We share a lot of the same resources, and we combine everything. But with that said, my personal opinion, okay, Directional Turbine is probably the best generator in the game for endgame. Okay. When you're at endgame, like me and Mrs. Cuddles, like, this is going to be the generator that you're going to shoot for. This generator is more just a flex and probably not even worth it. And I'll probably demolish it the moment this video is over. Okay. And I'll probably sell all the fuel cells on the market because it was a giant waste of my resources. But I wanted to make sure that you guys had an accurate representation of this unit. Okay. So, Directional Turbine, I believe, is the best use of your resources and the lowest amount of cost for the amount of power overall. Okay. Now, people online have stated that this is the best generator and you don't need anything else. And I would agree for the deep desert. You do not need anything else, any of these other power generators for the deep desert. You run just these. You can go ahead and make whatever you want to make. You can have your pentashields up. You can just put as many of these down as you want. Like it's crazy the amount of power generators that you can just put down. Okay. And depending on where you're building, like it might actually be the best generator in the game due to the fact that you get it super early. It's super easy to, it's super cheap, and it's the most easiest thing to fill up. Okay, you just go harvest a block of power cells and off to the races you go. It's good to go. You're powered up. You're good and you run it. But like I said, you do run into a production limit. Let me show you. If you guys don't believe me that these take up that, let me demolish that. And now we're at 58. We were at 59. Now we're at 58. So they do. They take up your production value. So you will have to monitor that in your production, what you want to do with it. Okay. So I would just, if I was telling everybody this fuel power generator, I would be putting these in. I would skip the omnidirectional turbine, skip this one altogether, go right into the directional turbine, and I would be farming these. Okay. I have a tower here of nothing but these. I call it my tower of power. And if you look, this is all my power cells inside my tower. So with that said, I hope you guys got something out of this, and please do hit the like, do hit that subscribe, and I will see you guys on the next one. And if you have any comments, leave it in the comment section below. I'd be happy to read them and maybe give me your insight. But with that said, I will talk to you guys later, and I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you on Arrakis.